Following the stronger-than-expected box office performance of Marvel's Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, the next MCU outing, Marvel's Eternals, will also be released exclusively in theaters. However, the trailer for Marvel's Eternals received a much more mixed response from audiences than did the trailer for Shang-Chi, with one of the recurring complaints focusing on the absence of legendary artist Jack Kirby's bright color palette and distinct visual style. The MCU currently finds itself in the position of having to rebuild audience excitement. A proverbial adaptation of Jack Kirby's Eternals that actually had featured Jack Kirby's visual hallmarks could very well have gone far towards that end. But without these elements, any movie adaptation of Jack Kirby's work comes across as needlessly drab and a bit too similar to everything else in the MCU. In this video, we will explore the absence of the Jack Kirby style and what it could mean for Marvel's Eternals as a whole. In doing so, we will cover the battle between Marvel and DC over Jack Kirby's adaptations, the marked difference between the Kirby style and director Chloé Zhao's sensibilities as director, and which MCU movie dared to stand out from the crowd by adapting the Kirby style. Let's begin though by briefly introducing comic book legend Jack Kirby himself. Jack Kirby is widely regarded as one of the most important and most influential artists in comic book history. He and Joe Simon are credited with creating Captain America, and Kirby and Stan Lee are credited with creating the Fantastic Four, which kickstarted the Marvel comic book universe as well as the Incredible Hulk. In the early 1970s, Kirby crafted a new roster of characters for DC Comics. Colloquially referred to as the Fourth World, Kirby's new saga introduced, among others, the New Gods, Darkseid, and Apocalypse to the DC Universe. In 1975, Kirby returned to Marvel, where he published The Eternals, a series that explored many of the same concepts and themes as the New Gods. In March 2018, Warner Bros. And DC announced that A Wrinkle in Time and Selma director Ava DuVernay would direct a film adaptation of The New Gods. The following month, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige stated that his company would be developing a movie based on Kirby's similarly themed The Eternals. Marvel scrambled to announce that it was developing an Eternals adaptation, suggested it hoped to head off a potential challenge from rival DC in the Jack Kirby department. The writer, director Chloé Zhao, who had previously applied to direct Black Widow, approached Marvel with an extensive visual presentation that left the studio and Kevin Feige very impressed. Possibly fearing that Zhao would take on another big-budget project, Marvel moved to hire her that September. Chloé Zhao is best known for directing small-scale docudramas that serve as deconstructions of the Western genre and its associated themes, namely rugged individualism. Her breakout film, 2018's The Rider, tells the real-life story of Brady Gendreau, a disabled Lakota rodeo star who plays himself in the film. Similarly, her 2020 feature Nomadland, which won Oscars for both Best Picture and Best Director, follows a fictional character played by Frances McDormand as she travels around the US and interacts with a number of real-life houseless nomads. As director, Zhao employs a documentary style of filmmaking that emphasizes real locations and backgrounds and natural lighting. In a September 9th article in Harper's Bazaar, she revealed that she was extremely inspired by Dune director Denis Villeneuve's visual style, to the point that she had used samples of his imagery when pitching her take on the Eternals to Marvel. This extremely grounded visual take is all well and good for contemporary films, but does that approach serve an adaptation of a source material so closely linked with Jack Kirby? Kirby is often referred to as the king of comics because of his visual personality. His art style is splashy and dynamic, featuring plenty of unique character poses and making use of multiple points of views. His work places a strong emphasis on movement, which is why his illustrations of fight scenes are so widely celebrated. Similarly, Kirby is noted for his distinct approach to depicting energy and negative space. He is especially well known for his use of Kirby dots, also known as Kirby crackles, to signify explosions and bursts of energy, as well as for use of vibrant colors and strong contrasts. If the trailers for Chloé Zhao's Eternals are anything to go by though, it would appear very little of Kirby's visual style will be present in the movie. While many fans defended the trailer's look, others argued that its overuse of desaturated colors offered a boring alternative to Kirby's vibrant comic book illustrations. The heavy emphasis on grays was a recurring focus of criticism, with many describing the film's color grading as muddy. Kirby fans were clearly expecting a more striking color palette, so naturally, both trailers left them feeling very disappointed. In order to understand why the Eternals trailers received such a mixed response, let's consider the reception of Thor Ragnarok. As with other Marvel films, Ragnarok's snarky brand of humor divided viewers, with some deeming it obnoxious. However, most fans were in agreement that the film was unique from a visual standpoint. Taika Waititi's psychedelic approach to depicting intergalactic travel, with its rich arrays of reds, greens, purples, and yellows, provided a sharp contrast to the blackness of space. Not only that, but it also evoked Kirby's use of energy lines and Kirby dots to convey movement. In a similar vein, fans appreciated how Waititi's emphasis on bright colors, the red in Hulk's chambers, the green in the dungeons, the gold and silver on Asgard, gave the film a strong visual personality. By contrast, Chloé Zhao's Eternals employs a more restrained color palette, one which doesn't exactly evoke Kirby's illustrations. The visuals are cold and drab. Even the sunsets, with their emphasis on faded grays, purples, and yellows, look anemic. There's little sense of visual pop. Where are the bright oranges and violets? Of all the MCU movies, Thor Ragnarok probably comes the closest to matching Jack Kirby's visual style. Rather than using an entire kaleidoscope worth of colors, this technique provided each setting with its own unique visual identity. So why is it that with a movie that originally showcased striking and colorful characters, do we not get a similar, or at the very least a complementary take visually? That is not something we at Midnight's Edge can answer. We can only speculate that Zhao is playing to her strengths, and given her past films, vibrant color and spectacle are not commonplace and may be outside of her comfort zone. But that is just going from what Marvel has released with their trailers. With Warner Bros. Having recently put its plans for a New Gods film on hold, the jury's still out on whether Jack Kirby's creative vision will ever receive a faithful adaptation. Chances went up though, with Ava DuVernay's departure. Her visual style is very plain and stodgy, placing a heavy emphasis on metallic colors and various shades of brown. But with Warner Bros. Having decided to shelve that project, it's unclear if, let alone when, a New Gods movie will reach the big screen. As far as Eternals is concerned, both trailers released thus far have made it clear it won't be the film Jack Kirby fans have been anticipating. More and more, it looks like they'll have no choice but to stick with Thor Ragnarok, and hope that, if and when Warner gets their New Gods movie off the ground, it'll offer them the visual cornucopia they've been craving. But for the time being, the future of Jack Kirby on film looks a lot like the color palette for Chloé Zhao's Eternals, bleak and cloudy. Are you looking forward to the Eternals film? Let us know in the comments.